So whoever sits near the table benefits from a cup of tea, right? Nimekuja na mtoi juu mamake hayuko. Akiwa na game pale yako sawa kabisa.
So I want us to talk about two things. Just try to analyze the rallies this week, opposition and
the JP.
Jubilee. Tusipigane sana, bonke. Sipige Raila sana.
One, two, three, four. 1, 2, 3, 4. Can you hear me? 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, 1, 2, 3, 4. Jared.
Welcome back if you're just joining us. You're watching Sunday edition here on KTN News. This is Kenya's only Sunday morning political show. Many thanks for joining us. Time to take a look at what has been happening in the local newspaper dailies. That is, of course, in terms of political headlines. And my guests are already here with me. Dismas Mokua, political analyst, is here with me. Bonke Komwai, Jubilee activist. I have governance expert, Brian Mutie. And also joining us from the county of Kisumu, as always, we'll be joined by CORD strategist, that is Jared Okello. We shall be seeking to have him on the show very shortly. He's already in our Kisumu studio to just give us his perspectives on our topics of discussion this morning. Right. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Morning, Ben.
Let's start with some of the headlines very quickly. Just let's start at the coasts, where we did see a lot of activity, as always, concerning the Governor Ali Hassan Joho. Earlier in the week, there were issues of earlier last week when he was stripped of his security. The regional coordinator Nelson Mara coming out to say that that was just a normal, reorganization of the security details there. Joho saying, asking why, questioning the motives by the national government, and coming out in that opposition congress at the Bomas of Kenya to say that he does not even need the state security. There are allegations or claims that he was arrested. That is on Friday. Just what gives politically when it comes to Ali Hassan Joho, Dismas? Is Jubilee just building his political career very massively?
Well, Ali Hassan Joho is a student of Mr. Raila Odinga, and any opportunity for him to maximize on media and create an emotional support with his voters is something that he welcomes. But when you look at the larger picture, it's about his security. And the regional administrator of the Coast Province, Mr. Nelson Marwa, has indicated that he wants the rule of order in the Coastal Province, and he says he's not going to brook any kind of mischief. And when you want to make sure that you bring Ali Joe down to size, then you attack him, and you also attack his loyal lieutenants as well as allies. Like for this particular case, we are told that he had gone to the police station to find out what happened to one of his friends who had been arrested. Right. And whether or not he was arrested, whether or not Ali Hassan Joe was arrested or detained, actually it's nobody has come out to make it clear in black and white whether he was arrested, whether he was detained, or maybe he was assisting the police with investigations. Right. But being the crafty politician that he is, he decided to issue statements claiming that he was arrested. And all he wanted to do was to create tension within Mombasa and to show the entire world that I've become a very powerful politician that are making President Kenyatta in Nairobi nervous. Because it's unlikely that Mr. Marwa would just wake up in the morning and act on his own motion or fail to brief his boss on whatever he's doing. But really, at the end of the day, when you look at the activities of Mr. Marwa, unless there's something which is not in the public domain, is assisting Jubilee lose their votes in the coastal region. Because, you know, President Kenyatta and his deputy, they go to coast, they try to woo the voters, they try to open a number of projects. You even recall the Uhuru Challenge, opening all a number of mischievous projects, and in the process making inroads. But the behavior of Mr. Marwan negates that. And you recall, at the end of the day, even the Inspector General of Police had to issue a statement, and they clarified that, in fact, Ali Hassan Joe had not been arrested nor detained, to lower tensions at the Coast Province. And at the end of the day, really, the person who won, in my view, is Ali Hassan Joe, because he has positioned himself as anti-Uhuru.
Does Nelson Marwa play into Ali Joho's hands? And is he mismanaging the whole situation?
No, Marwa is performing his duty as a police officer. I think Honorable Joho should have some decorum in his political statements. It was quite disappointing when you see a whole governor for him to address issues of Mombasa residents. And actually, this is not the first time Joe has shown disrespect to the presidency in court, and also always in his statement he can either attack the deputy president or the president. I think that is not the reason as to why Mombasa residents elected Joho. As far as he made claim to be on top in the protocol of ODM politics, I think what he's doing is not right for the common wananchi of Mombasa, and also the respect to the presidency. And now this is what we've been analyzing, Joho's sentiments and also his movements in Mombasa. Right. We are not going to allow. Actually, this is now, remember, Joe is one of the officials in court. His statement we can also replicate in what is happening in court politics. For them to address issues that are attacking Kenyans, their politics is based on individuals. This is the problem with Joho. A suspect is a suspect. If his friend is a criminal or a suspect, why was he going to the police station to rescue this person? Then he claimed that he has been arrested to create tension and commotion. We are not going to allow this. And we are encouraging Marwa to do his job. If Joho has gone against the law, he should be arrested like any other Kenyan.
Brian, what is your take on this?
I don't know when Bonge says
Joho issue.
I don't know when Bonge says they are not going to allow that. I don't know in which capacity. Perhaps you might shed some light on that later. But I must say that if we recall on what Michuki said at one point, that if you rat was neck, you should be ready to be beaten. Joho working against the system, and when I talk about the system, is the government of the day, should be prepared to, get embarrassed in no manner as possible, because he has been he has been a thorn in the flesh in the Jubilee government. Well, there might be some issues that he's not comfortable with as a person, but there's also a way of actually trying to resolve those issues in an amicable way without actually bringing a lot of drama and all that. Whether he was arrested, as Dismas said, or not, I think that it's only him who knows that whether he was arrested or not, because nobody is actually clear to what the versions are coming like. Boynet saying that he was not arrested, him saying that he was arrested. So we are not sure whether he was arrested or not. And therefore, Joho, a man of his stature, actually should be now maturing politically, in the sense that he should be now evolving from that kind of, mudslinging sort of politics to mature politics, where he's able to address the issues with the decorum. As much as there are some frictious issues with the government, he has a better way. He should devise a way of addressing these issues in an amicable way.
Brett. Real issues aside, the politics aside, who is winning politically? I mean, it's a political year. It's 7 months to the general election. According to you, who is winning between Jubilee, which has been trying to make inroads at the coast? Obviously, they claim they have made inroads. They are better standing compared to where they were in 2013. But who is winning? Some people seem to think that Joho's political career was under some threat by the likes of Hassan Omar in the race for the governorship. But now Jubilee have resurrected it, you know.
I must say that in politics, a week is very big. It's a very huge span for us to actually make conclusive decisions about who is going to win. To me, it's a little bit early. Ben, if you may ask me, there might be a lot of intrigues that might come into play as far as of now onward is concerned. And when you look at Joho's star rising before, I think there might be some also other frictious issues that might come into play. When you talk about Hassan coming also into play to seek for the same seat, and also remembering these people all belonging to the CORD ticket, there will be some sort of frictious moments and all that. And we are not clear how they are going to iron out or how they are going to square out who is going to be the flag bearer for the CORD ticket on the gubernatorial seat in Mombasa.
Where does this leave Mombasa politics, according to you, Dismas?
But maybe when TS says that Joe is fighting the system, I think that's erroneous. Because the Governor Alias and Joe is a politician, President Kenyatta is a politician, and all this is ODM and Jubilee. So Governor Joe is not fighting the government of Kenya or the state of Kenya. He's fighting another politician, and he's managed to create the impression that it's a David versus Goliath fight, which is giving him a lot of mileage in the coastal region. And this complicates matters for Senator Hassan Omar, because anytime there's a crisis between Joe and President Kenyatta, the voters in Mombasa see Joe as a winner. There's a lot of emotional connection with him. And not because he's done anything amazing. Even when you look at his development agenda, you wouldn't say that it's out of this world, that it's shining, that he's ticking the right boxes. He's just like all the other CORD governors. He's just done the bare minimum to survive. But when you look at the politics of Mombasa, anybody who is seen to be fighting the national government in Nairobi gets a lot of marks, gets a lot of mileage. That's why he probably was not even detained, but he decided to stick at the police station till it was very late in the evening. And when he gets out of the police station, the first thing he does is to address an audience. So you begin to wonder, these people gathered around the police station to listen to him, did they just come on their own, or there was somebody outside doing active mobilization? And this is all political play. At the end of the day, Governor Joe gets to win. But again, coming to Mr. Marwa, if indeed Governor Joe and his friends and political benefactors have done anything wrong, why can't they be arrested and they be prosecuted immediately without further delay? Because there's one constituency beginning to feel that, in fact, Governor Joe is being persecuted because of his close relationship with Mr. Raila Odinga. Right. So, and I think maybe as we approach the election, Mr. Bonet should be well advised that if there's any politician who has done a mistake, you move with speed, you arrest him, you do your investigations, and you prosecute him. Because you continue doing this, the principal loser in all this accumulated matter is President Kenyatta.
Right. Let's get Jared Okello's view on this. Jared, good morning. Well, how is Kisumu looking like this morning? And what is your take on this Marwa versus Joho debacle at the coast? Who is winning politically, Jubilee or Joho?
Good morning, Ben, and good morning, my fellow panelists in studio. Kisumu is doing well, it's shining. We are praying for rains every day. It's been a while since we saw some drop of rains. It is true that, Jubilee has chosen to make Governor Joho to be larger than life. And, Joho is there enjoying the drama, wallowing in the immense popularity that he's gaining every day courtesy of these wars. It is true that certain times when security is appraised, particularly for individuals who have access to security apparatus, such as Governor Joho, certain times when the appraisal is done and they realize that your security is not very much of a threat, then they would tend to reduce the number of police officers who are guarding you. When the threat is at its peak, they will tend to increase the number of security officers. There is no report that has been availed to the public or other serious government agencies such as NIS that should therefore appraise the security of an individual. So the choice to reduce or rather withdraw Governor Joho's security was just a deliberate attempt to put his life at risk by Jubilee administration because of the pronouncements he made when President Uhuru Kenyatta was visiting coastal region.
Right.
So I think that was wrong for the president to have done that. But you have to also look at it a little in depth. On Wednesday, Cod Brigade stroke NASA convened a meeting at Bomas of Kenya. At the end of the day, they earned acres and acres of space within both the mainstream press and the social media. But then on Friday, Jubilee in a rejoinder, they didn't plan to meet at the Kasarani, but they then thought that, you know, out of panic, they chose to also convene themselves in Kasarani in order to respond to certain issues that were presented during the Bomas convention. So instead of, therefore, Jubilee taking advantage of that day, enjoying acres of press, such as what Cod saw on Wednesday, they then chose to overshadow everything by frustrating Governor Joho. At the end of the day, people talked about Joho's arrest, people talked about Joho's frustrations at the coast to the detriment of Jubilee's pronouncements at Kasarani. So you ask who lost? Jubilee definitely lost the day, Ben.
All right. Interestingly, it's an issue that seems to be ongoing, the drama between Mara and Joe. We shall wait and see how that pans out. Let's take a look at something else, another supremacy battle, this time in the Rift Valley. Of course, it has been reported about, it has been written on, that is between the Baringo Senator Gideon Moi and the Deputy President William Ruto, both of who have been, trying to make inroads to be the kingpin in Rift Valley politics. There was a story that was much reported about their rivalry during the burial of former nominated Member of Parliament Mark Tor in the county of Uasin Gishu. And I don't think there was a lot of drama. I mean, my command of Kalenjin languages, dialects, but from what I could get from people who was translating, there was not much about that. But there is that rivalry between Moi and Ruto. Today, 7 months of the election this month, where would you place that?
That was interesting because you recall Mr. Ruto has accused Mr. Moi of failure to master his mother tongue and also master the Swahili language. And I recall that during that funeral, I'm confusing with President Moi, but Gideon spoke in his mother tongue for the very first time. And for the people who did the translation said that he had 3 key messages he was passing to the voters. Number 1 is not dividing the Kalenjin community, that the Kalenjin community knows what serves their selfish interests, and they're not going to be driven in one direction like goats or cows. And if you're a farmer, attempting even to do that for cows and goats is actually a nightmare. And then the second thing is told President Moi, or rather he told President Kenyatta, that if he's interested in votes in Rift Valley, he should go to the Rift Valley on his own motion, that he must not entertain the idea of having a power broker going to the Rift Valley to go and cast the votes. Right. And then number 3, he said that he comes from a family of respected personalities. And I think he was reminding all and sundry of his pedigree. And I think when he made those 3 statements, he made Mr. Ruto nervous, because when Duale spoke to speak, Duale, instead of focusing on the funeral, again he said that Gideon must be very careful when he addresses Mr. Ruto, that the entire community, including General Mahmoud Mohamed, carried President Moi on his back, and this is the right time for Gideon to carry Ruto to the presidency. And also when Mr. Ruto eventually spoke again in his mother tongue, he said that Gideon was not around when the president and himself formed the government. So he must not be the person to give them lectures on how to run this administration. And President Kenyatta knows that he got his votes last time and is going to use the same trick this time around. But when you look at the audience and the reaction, in as much as you may not understand the dialect, but when Gideon spoke, there was he got a very good reception. And you know, people were clapping for him, meaning that it probably made sense. And they did the same to Mr. Ruto. So it's going to be interesting to see, as we approach this election, what comes out. Right. But the reason why Gideon's pronouncements are very important, it's in the accumulated NASA as well as Jubilee politics. Because Gideon does not have a problem with President Kenyatta, and Gideon does not have a problem with everybody in NASA apart from Mr. Raila Odinga. So for instance, if NASA decides that Musalia Mudavadi is going to be the presidential candidate, then it seems to me Gideon will go the extra mile and give him all the kind of support he needs. Right. Because he loves everybody in NASA apart from Raila Odinga.
We'll talk about more that when we're talking about that opposition congress, which Nick Salat did attend and was later denounced by the rest of the Kano Brigade. But Bonke, Deputy President William Ruto is still the man to beat in Rift Valley. But can Jubilee wish away the influence or the chunks that Gideon Moi has control over in Rift Valley?
So, you know, Kitili, Gideon should know that Honorable William Ruto, he has come with his father, the former president. Ruto rose from nowhere, from a youth leader to an official of KANU. Right now, he's a deputy president. So Ruto has political history, right, which a political blind man may dismiss him in the Rift Valley. As far as Gideon may have his own opinion, he should also give respect to Honorable Ruto. Yeah, he cannot refer Ruto as a political broker. And the same Ruto is the one who introduced the president, the current president Uhuru Kenyatta, into the Rift Valley. So even if Gideon may have his own opinion, the fact is that if you go down there, you go down to Mashinani, the people of Rift Valley, the 100% of people of Rift Valley, they are behind Ruto. And anytime the president will avoid Ruto, I'm telling you, that shall be the end of
this.
Jubilee.
Was 6 to disagree?
Yeah, I mean, a casual view of Rift Valley politics tells you, let's start with West Pokot, that you had Samuel Pogisho, a very close friend of Mr. Ruto. He has decided to move to KANU, and he'll be running for Senate in West Pokot on a KANU ticket.
But that might be because of a personal interest, because West Pokot is very KANU.
Yeah, and then you have Professor Lonyangapuo there running for governor. So if Rift Valley was 100% in Mr. Ruto's basket, you would not be having those movements. And then you also forget about parts of Kajiado where you have an ODM governor, then you have Tunai who is going to be facing a very strong resistance. So I think it's probably wrong to say that Rift Valley is 100%. Yeah. And then where does that leave Governor Isaac Ruto? Because Governor Isaac Ruto is very strong in his government.
Yeah, you see, the same statements for Honorable Gideon Moi, those are the same statement Governor Ruto was using. They just need a political attention. It's either for the deputy president or for the president. So if they get that forum to address the president, they will accuse the deputy president, who is now the leader of the Rift Valley. Even if Gideon goes alone, of which he has not decided, Ruto is still weighing his hands. We were expecting him to go to Bomas of Kenya, which he didn't attend. So even if the Secretary General of KANU is talking, but Gideon has to say something, right, then we'll know that KANU is fully in NASA. Another thing is that the fact that he's saying Honorable William Ruto has no impact in the Rift Valley, I think that one is a daydreaming. What I would advise Honorable Gideon Moi is just to come and work with us under the leadership of William Ruto, and they will have his political.
All right. Brian, can Senator Moi support President Uhuru Kenyatta and have be at loggerheads with the deputy president? Can that work?
I think that's a dilemma that the president himself is facing as a person, how to balance the egos of these two gentlemen here. One, I want to say that President Kenyatta and Ruto have a different relationship to what he has with Gideon Moi. Remember, the son, Gideon's father was actually appointed or handpicked by Kenyatta himself, the father, to Uhuru to be the deputy. And again, come 2002, Moi himself actually picked Uhuru as his apparent hire to the KANU slot.
So it's a family affair.
So it's a family
It's
affair.
a dynasty. Should that be tolerated?
It's a dynasty. That, it's a tradition that perhaps President Uhuru is in dilemma on how to go against that, and it's not easy. Let me assure you that. And therefore, this is a dilemma that is facing on the part of Ruto. He's a man who has that ability to mobilize the people. He's a self-made politician, a man who has brought himself from the ground to where he is right now, and his ability to mobilize the Kalenjin people or voters is not somebody whom you can just dismiss like that. And therefore, this offers that kind of dilemma for President Kenyatta on how to balance the two guys. But when you talk about whether they can coexist, the two of them, in the house of Kenyatta, I think the two can be, their egos can be massaged in a way that they are able to accommodate each other's views and all that.
Let's get a final comment from Jared. Jared, the issue is Senator Gideon Moi. His supremacy battles with the deputy president over the control of Rift Valley votes. He says he supports President Uhuru Kenyatta. There are quarters that think KANU will be working with the opposition, but he did not attend that opposition congress at the Bomas of Kenya. Just what gives?
Well, Ben, it is true that Gideon Moi has had issues with the Deputy President, William Ruto. And I think much of it is because, the politics of Kenya, for a very long time in our history, has predominantly been controlled by the Politburo. Those who have, the genetics of politics. You talk of the Moi family, the Jaramogi family, Kenyatta family. So they really wonder how, from nowhere, Deputy President William Ruto is at the top echelons of governance in the Republic of Kenya. So that hasn't settled very well for people like Gideon Moi, who ought to have had full control of the Rift Valley politics. And for Gideon Moi to really accept that he will be a subject to Deputy President William Ruto, to him looks like a mirage. So I think that is where the problem begins. But again, the people of Rift Valley, particularly the Kalenjins,
Right.
having been in government for a very long time, under Moi as deputy president for 9 years, as president for 24 years, they understand what governance is all about. They understand about power and how power controls certain fundamentals in people's lives. You remember just well over 3 months ago, the President of the Republic of Kenya, President Uhuru Kenyatta, went to his backyard, and people who grow coffee, who had loans in certain financial institutions to the tune of 2 billion were waived. So that, according to Kalenjins, is what power entails. So you have Deputy President William Ruto, with many people having loans for growing tea, growing maize, on fertilizers, and they still have to carry and shoulder that burden of repaying those loans. So they really don't understand the participatory role of Deputy President William Ruto to his people in the Rift Valley. So that is another problem that is presenting itself to the advantage of Gideon Moi, and that is where William Ruto is getting everything wrong. Well, coming to what happened in Bomas of Kenya, if a political party can send its Secretary General to go and represent it in a function that you would agree with me, and because the Secretary General is the custodian of all instruments of a political party structure, that is a political party together with its leadership in such a function.
All right.
You even listened to the dissenting voices that came, Ben, from Nick Salat's presence at the Bomas. These were very junior people, in fact, just council members, Zipporah Kitonyi and many others. To date, Gideon Moi has not distanced himself from the participatory role that was played by Nick Salat at the Bomas of Kenya, Ben.
But he has not also supported it. Anyway, we'll talk about more of that when you're talking about that Congress. I want us to leave it there in terms of the newspaper review, political pages. We take a quick commercial break. When we return, we'll talk about more in more details about the opposition congress at the Bomas of Kenya, and also talk about the Jubilee Smart Membership drive on Friday, the two political events across the political divide. We'll also talk about the voter registration exercise, the mass voter registration exercise, the second phase that kicks off tomorrow. Very important by the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, who are targeting between 4 to 6 million new voters. Will they achieve that? Also, what are some of the issues that Kenyans maybe need to know about voter registration as the country heads into the elections? Stay with us. Ati? Kiwevo faster kidogo. So, tuanze na siasa Bomas. So tuko na bites gani na gani? Tuko na bite ya Raila peke yake. Ziko kando kando. Alafu Jubilee. As one bite. Okay, tuanze na hizo za opposition kwanza. Alafu tuende hizo Jubilee after some time. Sinda queue tu utakuwa unasikiliza. So hizi ziko kando. Sawa. Sawa. Eh. Welcome back. You're watching Sunday edition here on KTN News. So the political opposition in this country has been making efforts to try and form a formidable force, a united kind of approach to the 2017 general election to bundle Jubilee out of power. And on Wednesday this week, they did hold that Congress, the opposition Congress, putting together or bringing together a total of 15 political parties, including the Coalition for Reforms and Democracy called affiliate parties, that is ODM, Wiper and Ford Kenya, as well as the Musalia Mudavadi-led Amani National Congress. There was some representation from KANU that has been disputed so far. Let's now listen in. They did resolve to approach the August general election as a united front. There is no candidate yet, flag bearer. So what that means is still out there. Let's listen in to the CORD leader Raila Odinga.
Urge all opposition supporters to discard the fears that Jubilee will steal the August elections. They will not. We shall not allow it. We shall make it impossible for anyone to steal the elections. But we are also sending word to Jubilee again that the cost of stealing this election will be regrettable.
A lot of talk about rigging of elections. Let's also listen in to the KANU Secretary General Nick Salat.
Ya kwamba chama cha KANU nikiwa katibu mkuu tuko ndani kabisa, ndani.
All right, that is just some excerpts from that meeting at the Bomas of Kenya on Wednesday. Dismas, what did you take away from that meeting? What is the key message that you took out from that?
You remember during our last show, there were fears that this meeting was going to call for mass action. And maybe to blow my own trumpet, I was among the people who said that at this meeting, it would have been a big error for them to say they're going to engage in mass action. But instead, they were going to engage in, they were going to ask their supporters to do voter registration, to go and register as voters. And that was the underlying message. Because every single speaker said that for them, the big issue here is that they've got so many people who are above the age of 18 who have not yet registered as Kenyans, or they've got their IDs, but they're not registered voters. So that was the underlying message, and every person spoke about it. And then number two, they attempted to bring out two important messages. One was on corruption. You remember Raila Odinga speaking about Kamata NASA and also Musalia Mudavadi. So it seems to me that corruption is going to be one of their messages. And also they addressed the issue of inequality. But when you look at that meeting at Bomas in totality, you can see that it was a very delicate meeting, even in terms of the seating arrangement and protocol. Because there are some people who would have wanted Musalia Mudavadi to be the last person to speak, but the main principal said that, I know you're not part of CORD, you're part of NASA, and maybe you should join the queue. And that's why he was among the first people to speak.
And is that going to be a problem moving forward for the whole group?
It's going to be a major problem because you recall the lieutenants have said that CORD is made up of 3 principals, and if there's any other person who is going to join us, is going to join the queue at number 4. You could even recall there was a bit of competition among those principals, because I paid specific attention. Musalia Mudavadi delivered a very short and precise speech, and he even quoted Shakespeare. And after doing that, he spoke about corruption and he spoke about the inequalities in Kenya. And you would notice that Kalonzo Musyoka and Wetangula struggled to do the same. Kalonzo quoted Shakespeare as well, as if he can't quote another writer. And then Wetangula did the same thing, quoting Wole Soyinka. So it was a competition among those 4 principals. And I would imagine even during the back room when they were looking at protocols, I suspect there was a struggle. Who is going to sit on Raila's right? Who is going to speak after Raila? How is Raila going to capture this speech? And you notice, Wetangula did not speak about NASA in this speech. And Kalonzo paid very little attention to NASA. And it's Raila who crowned it all by saying, Niksema, Kamata, you pronounce NASA. And I think that's the message probably that Musalia Mudavadi was waiting to say, Eureka, this is my moment. And when you look at the entire function, one imagines that there's going to be friction at the end of the day. Right. One of the principals is going to bolt.
Mm-hmm. Brian, what did you take away from that meeting?
I think after the meeting you could actually see how things are actually unfolded in the name of Wetangula Masika himself. when actually he was actually interviewed separately, and he said that at that moment it does not recognize NASA. And therefore the question of how they are going to manage actually the expectations and how they are going to manage the affairs of the NASA, if it's going to be actualized, is the biggest challenge that these guys are facing. You know, as I said before in this forum, the win for them is to get the right pairing which can give Jubilee a run for their money. If they are not able to handle that kind of hurdle, I think that should be actually a sign for them to be preparing to lose to Jubilee, because Jubilee itself, as I said before, seems to have put its act together. They know who they are fronting in the battlefront. But if NASA is able now to, you know, work properly on the arithmetics on a pairing which is able to win the hearts of the people in terms of voting, that's the only way they are going to address the issue. I understand they also brought the person in the name of David Ndii, a very key, you know, critic of the Jubilee government. Him coming from the gamer community, coming to address a NASA meeting was a very, you know, strategic kind of a move by the NASA, in the sense that they were trying to tell the people, look here, he is one of you, but he is able to pinpoint the loopholes that are existing within your system.
And the fact that David Ndii has portrayed himself as somebody who was been non-political.
Non-political, exactly.
But that is for him to answer. Bonke, looking at that meeting at the Bomas of Kenya, is Jubilee getting sleepless nights?
No. NASA, yes, NASA is here. But as far as they are trying to portray unity in NASA, the truth of the matter is that there is friction and pressure in that party at the moment. Immediately they finished that function, you heard me, Wetangula he excluded himself with the current coalition. It is true that between Wetangula and Mudavadi, Wetangula thought that he's going to be the lawyer spokesman in court. Now Mudavadi is coming in, so there is that commotion. These are two leaders coming from one region, and both of them, they want to have shares and powerful shares in this party. So NASA, they still have a long way to go. And again, the day they will now come up with their presidential aspirant. In fact, I think that is now the discussion they're having right now. And the only option they have, they will use the same system Kibaki and Honorable Raila did in 2013 of coalition government. Because they are weighing what is the take of Kalonzo Musyoka. Wetangula will also argue his case have been with you since we lost the election 2013. Mudavadi is here, is coming, but he can also claim Mudavadi just joined us the other day. Me have been I've been with you on the street, you know, running up and down. Yeah. So if they don't tackle that issue, and again, Kenyans, we are not ready for another coalition government where we are going to pay the prime minister and his deputies, president, and all that. Yeah. So if the indication they are showing us that they give us their presidential aspirant, we will replicate our winning formula we used in 2013 this year.
Okay. I've got a burning point here. It would actually be very naive for anybody to imagine that there is no friction between Raila, Kalonzo, Wetangula, and Musalia Mudavadi. These are four politicians who claim to have made it on their own. You've got to Musalia and Kalonzo have been vice presidents. Wetangula has been a high-flying foreign affairs minister. Raila has been a prime minister. So all of them have got political egos. And when you study the basics of organizing a political operation, for you to imagine that there is no friction, then that would be naive. In fact, what is needed there is friction. But the reason why they are going to be united, it's not because of that friction or because of their egos. All of them know that as a team, if they do not unite this time round to stop President Kenyatta from winning again, and President Kenyatta wins and Ruto, as we approach 2022, all of them are going to be a chapter in history books. Because by then, Ruto will have become so strong, they probably not be able to manage him. And all the governors who are going to win in August, maybe assuming that Governor Munya wins, Kidero, Mutua, there'll be probably 10 other strong presidential candidates. So it's probably easy for them to decide among the four of them who is going to be to represent their interest, than wait for another 15 guys to come on board so that there'll be 20. Now it will be so complicated.
Let's talk to Jared a bit about this. Jared, I'm sure you are following this, even though you are in the county of Kisumu, but a lot of people, CORD supporters, that liken the NASA, you know, the so-called NASA, whatever it is right now, to the National Rainbow Coalition in 2002. Were there any similarities from where you sit seeing this at Bomas. Did you see the same kind of energy and unity that we saw in 2002?
Ben, firstly, we have to come into agreement that politics is a game of numbers. And IEBC had already given out dates for voter registration. They are projecting about 10 million new registered voters in this 1 month long registration exercise. The speed at which Jubilee adherents presented this, now an act called Elections Amendment Act 2015, rushed it to Parliament, cooled tempers by forwarding it to the Senate, but at the end of the day, coming out with the same result, and the president moving very quickly to assent to this law against all expectations, including his church, the Catholic, was a testament that indeed there was something in the offing. And they then chose to use these laws in order to suppress certain regions that are perceived not to be supporting Jubilee's agenda. What they knew was going to happen on Wednesday was to call for mass demonstrations and protests and perhaps violence in cord regions such as Mombasa, Nyanza, Nairobi, Western Province, and many other places, so that in the midst of that discord, people do not come out in large numbers to vote. That was their expectation. But when people moved to Bomas of Kenya and came up with a different deliberation, the people have to come out strongly in cord regions to register as voters and hence face Jubilee at the ballot, that was the turning point to Jubilee's quest to have discord within cord regions. Now you have said that it takes the shape of what we saw in the year 2002 under National Rainbow Coalition. Having realized that the former President Moi was hell-bent on bringing in somebody who was a junior in politics at the time to take over the leadership of this country against the wishes of those who were experienced and presented themselves as the best, the opposition then came together, united, in order that they could face Moi's single candidate. We are seeing that going on by NASA and by extension code, where different political parties are coming together and they are reading this script from Gambia, from Nigeria, and from many other places where we have seen the opposition trouncing the establishments.
But Jared, Jared, I have a question for you. I have a question for you.
Yes, go ahead, Ben.
Many people would argue that not much has changed from the team that Jubilee, with Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto on the ticket, faced in 2013. They faced Raila Odinga, they faced Kalonzo Musyoka, they faced Musalia Mudavadi, and they defeated them. Some people would argue that not much has changed.
Ben, first things first, there are 2 million voters that were cast in favor of the president and not to anybody else. It never reflected on members of county assembly, never reflected on the Senate, never reflected in the gubernatorial positions, never reflected with the members of parliament. 2 million voters that are still in question to date. So if we assume, therefore, that certain machinations were used in order that these 2 million votes were topped in favor of Uhuru Kenyatta, then we are saying that if everything remains constant, then already Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto have already lost, even before 2017. But you also have to take cognizance of the fact that Musalia Mudavadi ran as a presidential candidate and got well over 400,000 votes. So you are having 400,000 votes. We are assuming that his backyard is still safe and is bringing everything into court's basket. So if you had 5.8 million votes that Raila Odinga got to 400,000, we are talking about 6.2 million votes. Then, mathematically speaking, we have to hive off 2 million from Uhuru Kenyatta's votes that are still questionable today.
All right.
Uhuru Kenyatta has already gone home.
All right,
so,
thanks.
NASA coming together as one formidable force is a testament that, you know, Jubilee is heading home in August 2017.
Thanks, Jared. Thanks, Jared. Dismas, in absolute numbers, from 2013, where are we today in terms of NASA if they stick together and Jubilee?
Well, you know, Jared raises a very fundamental issue about the so-called 1.2 million ghost voters, as we were told in the Supreme Court, the proceedings. So assuming that you clean the voters register and it's very clean, and it's only people who've been registered who are actually going to cast their ballot, that introduces an entirely new mathematics in the race. And then two important messages that Raila made in Bomas that people did not pay attention to. Number one, he said, he reassured the opposition supporters that this time round, elections are not going to be stolen. The reason why he made that statement is to make sure that there is not going to be voter apathy within his voters. Because in the past, people say Raila does not know how to take care of his Boma. He lets his cows get stolen left, right, and center. And that means that there would be a number of people who would not go to cast their ballot in his favor by saying every time we vote for him, his votes get stolen. So that was an important thing. And then secondly, he made a statement which is very dangerous and which needs to be looked at carefully when he said that if anybody compromises the election this time round, they're going to regret. I wonder what that means. But fundamentally is the voter registration. If you're able to get the numbers and people turn out in large numbers to cast their ballots, this vote will be too close to call. So you cannot really predict. You can't look at the August scoreboard today and say Jubilee is going to win or NASA is going to win. But all over the world, wherever the opposition have united, the incumbent government has gone home. If you look at Nigeria, you look at Ghana, you look at Gambia, you know, mostly in Africa. If the opposition is able to unite, then the incumbent goes. And I'm sure now for Bonke, they're really working hard to ensure that Raila goes his way, Wetangula goes his way, and Musale goes his way, so that they can go through right the middle.
What's your take, Bonke, on all this?
Well, the issue of Jared about the numbers, it is only in Kenya if after you've been defeated, some people will claim that you've stolen an election. Remember, in 2013, the former Prime Minister conceded the defeat. So if there was an issue of stealing an election, I think it could have been handled by then. So it's not an issue which he should bring at this particular moment. The same formula, and I'll go back to my word, that if it was a matter of stealing, Jubilee government won 2013 election. And if there was an issue, the issue went to court, and Raila conceded the defeat. So the NASA coming in, I don't see any impact, because you'll allow me to call there are some political parties inside NASA, just briefcase political parties. If you try to analyze those political leaders with the numbers they have, there is no any impact. Because even in Musalia Mudavadi's county, Raila has members of parliament who are elected with ODM certificates. So NASA coming in, it's just an image, but I don't see numbers adding up in NASA. I don't see any number adding up.
Yeah, I think speaking from a sort of neutral perspective, you realize that both parties, as I said last week, have gained some enormous inroads in each other's strongholds. And when you look at what Jubilee has done, it has taken a huge chunk of votes, potential votes from the Maa community, the Kisii as well. Ukambani, it has made some inroads. And the coast, where they have made the biggest kind of gains as far as potential voters are concerned. And therefore, when you ask yourself who stands a better chance of winning this kind of seat come this year, 2017, to me, I'll tell you, there are other factors that we have not looked into. There is also the issue of the Mount Kenya region, being a block or not a block, the Meru vote, with Munya also, shaking the status quo of the Mount Kenya voting block.
But Munya said that he will support President Uhuru Kenyatta,
well,
despite his PNUs.
Those are some of the intrigues that we are still looking into, because yesterday we were saying he might bring some votes to the court. Now he's looking, things have changed. Now he might actually bring something for Jubilee.
Before you go into, I want us to take a look at Jubilee's function as well at Kasarani and what it meant politically. But before we do that, this much from where you sit, what is NASA's best winning formula?
I think the reason why NASA has not yet declared a candidate, they're waiting to see how the voter registration goes. So as soon as we finalize the voter registration, then every candidate will be able to look at the numbers. Like for instance, I would imagine if it's Wetangula, he would say these are the number of people that I command. Or if it's Musalia and Raila, when they have the absolute numbers, then they can go to the table and start negotiating. I would imagine if I were Musalia Mudavadi, I would ensure that there is massive voter registration where my political party, that's Amani, has got a stronghold. And when you look at those figures, because there is team claims that about, if you get everybody who has got an ID today to go register as a voter, he'll have about 3.5 million Luya votes. So if he comes on board with 3.5 million Luya votes, then he can look at Kalonzo in the air and say, how many votes do you have? And again, from statistics, it's claimed that it's very easy for Kalonzo to say, I've got about 1.5 million votes. So I think those are the numbers they'll be looking at. I don't think they're just going to participate in some voodoo arrangement and decide to nominate one of their own. That would be from a quantitative perspective. And then there's the qualitative bit, which says that Raila Odinga, if you listen to radio stations controlled by Jubilee or in Jubilee strongholds, they keep on perpetuating this myth that, Raila cannot be elected. There's the Raila phobia. And in fact, Raila is now emerging to be a very good mobilizer for Central Province. The mere mention of Raila will make sure that people early in the morning go and register as voters. You don't even need to have an active mobilization. And then there's the perception about Kalonzo. Kalonzo says, I've been the DP for a long time. I've made my sacrifices. It's my time to run. I'm older than Wetangula. I'm older than Musalia. So you can spend your time in the queue. So I think those are the variables they'll be looking at. But more important, as I indicated earlier on, is the phobia for William Samoei Ruto, which will make them unite and have one of their own. But again, another point they may want to consider, who among the four can they trust? Like for instance, can Raila trust Wetangula? Can Raila trust Musalia Mudavadi? Can he trust Kalonzo?
All right.
Yeah, I think those are the dynamics they'll be looking at.
Then all these four NASA leaders, that is the Right Honorable former Prime Minister, Kalonzo, Wetangula and Mudavadi, they have served in previous government in powerful positions. I've been asking myself what they are going to sell to Kenyans this time round that is going to convince a 21st century Kenyan that they are going to do which Jubilee government has not done so far. We have no problem. Raila Odinga, actually we want him to be the presidential candidate for NASA. Then it is easy. It's not the first time Raila is vying as the president. Remember, he contested in 2013 and the president defeated him. So we have no pressure. Let them analyze whatever they're analyzing right now. We are very ready, be it Mudavadi, be it Raila, be it Kalonzo. But what we need to discuss is that all these personalities, how is their performance as far as they claim that Jubilee has not done some 1, 2, 3. And even in the previous government they've served, what did they do which Jubilee government has not actualized? That's the question we need to ask ourselves.
Say something, Ben. When you talk about the right combination that would take Jubilee home, I think this is a high time to me that the Right Honorable Raila should now say that he is passing the mantle to another safe pair of hands to take the leadership of this country. If you ask me, and not being a sympathizer of any of them, but I tell you straight in your eyes that Mudavadi Kalonzo ticket will be the ticket or the pairing that perhaps might give Jubilee a run for their money. But again, Baba has an opportunity now to say, is the kingmaker this time round, because as Disma said that there has been numerous cases of voter apathy in the mention of Raila as a presidential candidate. And now to demystify that and to ensure that at least he curbs all that followed that might be as a result of voter apathy due to his candidature, this is the time that is likely, or is supposed to now say another team Tosha, so that now he is seen to be a good statement, because people are saying...
Would that also bring apathy to Raila's supporters?
Yeah, it is.
Who will say if Baba is not on the ticket?
I don't think so, because when you go to Luo Nyanza per se, you realize that Raila is a small god, and whatever he says, whatever he breathes in, is actually taken in as the right kind of recipe by the community and all that. Wait a minute. Luo Nyanza and Central voting blocks are the only patterns that are homogeneous and are always ready to vote 100% by the voice of whoever is being taken as the king.
All
in
right,
that
all right.
place.
I want us to talk about you.
Ben, I wanted to, just a second.
30 seconds.
Yes, I wanted to tell my brother here, Luo Nation is a democratic nation. We know what we want. We respect Raila as the opposition leader, but we have our own opinion. I'm in Jubilee, and he has some Kikuyus who are supporting ODM. So if he's saying Raila is a small god, it means Luo Nation they are not. There's something they're worshiping. They're not worshiping the Almighty God.
No, that's,
so we respect
quoting it out
Raila.
of context.
We respect Raila as the opposition leader, but there are Luos who have their opinion. Like Engineer James Reggae, you saw him yesterday. He's a member of Parliament.
I think we are talking about
Honorable
politics here, not religion. When
Yeah,
I
yes,
say
that's what I'm
small
saying.
God,
But many say that the
Yeah,
likes of Brege have
they're
signed their
inconsequentials.
political obituaries.
Exactly.
Yeah, so what we are trying to say, somebody like me, there are people who believes that Uhuru Kenyatta is the most competent leader. As far as Raila Odinga is in opposition, is coming from Luo. Not all Luo nation are behind Raila this time round.
All right, fair enough, fair enough. Let's talk about Jubilee now. And Jubilee also, 2 days later after that opposition congress at the Bomas of Kenya, did hold their own event. That was a membership drive, launching the smart card for the Jubilee. A lot of politics was spoken, a lot of rebuttals to what was said at the Bomas of Kenya. And Jared Okello did say that that was not planned. It was in response to the opposition meeting at the Bomas of Kenya. We don't know if that, Bonke will tell us if that's true. But a lot of it was spoken. Let's listen in to what the two leaders, President Uhuru Kenyatta and Deputy President William Ruto, had to say in that meeting.
In 2013, we faced a formidable opponent with half the government, a prime minister sitting, a vice president sitting. But today, we face a clueless, rudderless, leaderless, planless, disorganized opposition.
Wana Jubilee, let us not be distracted by those who have no agenda for the Republic of Kenya. Let us not be distracted by those who have no direction but power for the sake of power. Let us be focused on the transformation of this country.
What do you read from that? Is that confidence or is it panic?
Well, two things emerged from that meeting at Kasarani. Number one, and maybe at some stage you will play the soundbite, the president and his deputy are appealing to their bases by portraying the NASA as a bunch of confused guys, so as to give them motivation to wake up early in the morning to go and cast their ballots. And I think the deputy president is very well on that. If you are a student of communication and you want to award him marks, it's very easy to give him a 9 out of 10. Because as soon as he spoke that, when you look at social media and all the people from Central Kenya and Rift Valley, they went home with that message, and they're saying the opposition is in shambles. And then number two, the president attempted to introduce the issue of performance when he said that the opposition has been in government for a long time and there's nothing to write home. He even made a mistake by saying that Musalia Mudavadi was appointed a cabinet minister while he was still in school. And I don't know how that happens, considering that they're almost age mates. And for President Kenyatta to say that is introducing a new dimension into our political space. And I really hope that NASA would take him head on what he said, because he says, let's now elect leaders based on their performance records. And I'm hoping that NASA would take him head on and say, for the last 4 years you've run the government of Kenya, this is, in our view, this is what you've done. And maybe that's what Boke is supposed to tell us, what these guys have done in the last 4 years to make us vote for them in future. Not holding brief from Musalia Mudavadi, but you know Musalia Mudavadi, at the age of 32, he was Minister for Finance, and he is credited as having stabilized the financial sector in Kenya. He established the KRA, and you know he did so many things. When he was in ICT, he is the one who liberalized the airwaves in Kenya and created the opportunity for Safaricom and these other organizations. So I'm hoping really that for NASA, all their leaders would actually give us a matrix of, say, 5 things they've done in the past, which can convince us that we can vote for them on August, so that the scoreboard reflects success. And also for Bonke and Jubilee to tell us, over the last 4 years, this is what you've done. And that would be a very good attempt for Kenya to run away from tribalism, and we start voting leaders on their performance indicators. That would be very useful. But obviously, you know, when the deputy president was speaking at Kasarani, he was not addressing the people who were seated in that room. He was merely addressing the aspirants. And again, to respond to Jared, for him to claim that that meeting was organized in response to what NASA done at Bomas, I think really that's dragging it too low. I know for a fact that Jubilee had planned for that meeting long time ago.
Wonky, what was the main message from that meeting?
Okay, what, you know, if you analyze the current speeches of the opposition leaders, it's, you will wonder the agenda they have for Kenyans. They are just politics of attacking personalities. It's just politics of demonstrations and inciting Kenyans. But for them to tell us that when you give us this, you give us an opportunity to lead this country, these are some of the things we are going to put in place. And my brother here was asking that what Jubilee government has done. Remember the issue of insecurity. When Jubilee came into power, Uhuru Kenyatta, the president, has tried. And as we speak, now you can see we have a peaceful country. Even in the United States of America, Obama did not change the United States within 5 years. And even in the coalition government, where the former prime minister was the prime minister then with the President Kibaki, look at how they performed within 5 years. And actually, the former prime minister was attacking now the outgoing president. That is the most competent, and he was sidelined in that government. That's why he didn't have capacities to perform some of his duties or to implement the policies they had as the coalition. So if they are talking about the performance of Jubilee, I think Jubilee we are on the process of implementing the policy we had. No one can have a policy for 5 years. If you are a political strategist or political advisor to a politician, politicians, that's why we had the Vision 2030. So we've been trying to perform and to implement, and that is the process. We are in that actualization. So look at this electricity initiative. If you go down there to the village, Jubilee has made this to be accessible to common man at a very lower rate. And this we could not see that during the coalition government when the former prime minister was prime minister then. Right. The railway project, look at the laptop, they were saying, oh, where's the laptop? These are some of the things, when you get into the system, you sit down, you strategize, you solicit funds for this project, then you can see now our small kids now, they have got the laptops. So Jubilee, if you compare or consider the performance of the current government within these 4 years, and remember, when the president came into power, he had a case at The Hague. Remember, president is a husband, is also a father. Even you, if you have a case right now in court, my friend, even if you're anchoring news here, at the back of your mind, you are not settled. When you go back home, you may be shedding tears behind curtains without no one seeing. So the president took this as a personal burden. And he assured Kenyans that it is my issue. I don't want to involve Kenyans. And even opposition leaders told Kenyans that the president should not involve this as a Kenyan issue. This is their personal issue. He did it. On that process, he tried. So when we were getting into power...
It became a Kenyan issue.
It was just the relationship you have with the president.
Okay.
So the president tried. Within that 4 years when he had issues, actually, I would give Jubilee government 80%. And that's why we are encouraging Kenyans. We have to re-elect, and I'll request them, we re-elect the president.
80%?
Yeah, for the Jubilee government to
actualize. All right, thanks.
Yeah.
Both sides, both Jubilee and NASA, the opposition, seem to be trying to woo aspirants and even sitting leaders. According to you, which side is most attractive to its own base in terms of the aspirants?
I think when you look at the two sides, almost operating on the same level in terms of coercing, potential aspirants to join their bandwagon. But if you look at the recent law that barred people from, hopping from one party to the other, I think every side is trying to consolidate its base so that at least it has a good team of lieutenants who are able to take their journey to the next level. And having said that, I think I like the energy Bwana Bongi is actually exhibiting in terms of supporting how Jubilee has fared so far. But again, you realize that Jubilee, as the incumbent government, is also facing its own challenges. Well, we are able to see some tangible areas that they have actually, run away with in terms of development, such as SGR, although with its own reservations, and the issues of the laptops and all that. You realize that any government operating at an optimum, it has to face these kind of bottlenecks, and it is the owners of the government of that particular setup to come out and set the record straight. And the Jubilee is lucky to have one man in the name of William Ruto who is able to put that in perspective. Whether you like him or not, he has the gift of gab and is able to, pacify every situation to work for him. Again, when you're looking at the intrigues of this year, 2017, as I said, Jubilee government with its team as it is right now, it's a matter of just solidifying the areas that it has not capitalized on well, and ensuring that they make some good inroads and all that. But
let's get a final comment from Jared before we move on to the issue of voter registration. Jared, the Deputy President William Ruto seems to think that the opposition, as was constituted in 2013, was more united than it is now. How do you react to that?
Well, as I said earlier, Ben, what was convened in Kasarani was just in response to scathing attacks that Jubilee government received from the opposition on Wednesday at the Bomas of Kenya. You remember this function was convened when the president had not even landed back from India. And the big message that came out, yes, they were attacked on issues of corruption, joblessness, inequality in distribution of national cake, but one fundamental message was about voter registration, particularly those from CORD regions. So they knew that as soon as that message will sink and CORD regions will register in mass, then Jubilee would definitely have a very big challenge to bridge the difference. So that is why they had to quickly convene at Kasarani in order to respond to issues that were brought forth. But allow me, Ben, before I come to your question, the Deputy President comes out to actually insult people from the opposition, calling them rudderless, people who have got no vision, people who have got no ambition, people who will definitely be divided at the end of the day. If you see somebody discussing an opponent, then that is the kind of opponent giving him sleepless nights. Otherwise, you didn't even have time to discuss them. So by both the president and the deputy coming out to actually throw insults at the opposition is a true manifestation that they have panicked and perhaps things are not very well on their part. Jubilee has 7 months, 11 days from today to give us 5 national stadia of international standards, 9,500 kilometers of roads, school laptops, many, many things that they promised. 5 million jobs we are expecting before the end of their term, and many other things that they promised. So they have known that they failed flat on the faces of the Kenyan electorate, and now they have resorted to insults and calling people names and diverting the attention of the people. I want them to know that CORD is aware, and NASA is quite aware, that if they unveil their candidate today, then all the guns will be trained towards that candidate. What happened in Gambia? The opposition came to unite 1 month to the election, and the establishment that had entrenched itself for 22 years went home. So we are reading all this, and we know at the opportune time when the candidate will be unveiled. All those under NASA are also aware that not all of them can be presidents on the same day, at the same time. They all know that. And it will call for sacrifices that Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka talked about, and that is the path that they are ready to walk.
Thanks,
Ben.
thanks, Jared. Thanks, Jared. Before I get final thoughts from the gentleman here, let's talk to one of our viewers, Michael, calling us from the county of Taita Taveta. Michael, good morning. Michael, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you, Ben. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. What do you think about this issue, the state of the race? What's
First
happening
of all,
in the country?
I want
Yes.
to appreciate the opportunity.
All right.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to appreciate the opportunity to talk to KTN. Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, and I'm also extending my regards to the panelists out there.
Yes.
Right. First, I have 3 points to make. Hello?
Yes, go ahead. We can hear you.
Number one,
Yes.
I've had this notion, we've had this narrative going on around that the leaders in the opposition, the likes of Musalia Mudavadi, Raila Odinga,
Right.
Kalonzo Musyoka, and so on and so forth, have been in government for a long time and did not do anything. Now, then the question is, we have the current administration that is led by President Uhuru and his deputy, William Ruto.
All right.
Right, these people, there's one fact that goes and discuss that these two were also powerful individuals in the in the previous government.
Okay.
So the argument that you have been in government and didn't do anything to the rest of us doesn't make any sense, because in any case, people are seeking here is to take over leadership. They would want to be president. So I don't want to believe that someone would have done as a minister what the president should be doing now.
All right, Michael. Where you're calling us from, the county of Taita Taveta has been known to lean very much to the opposition, especially ODM and CORD. Are you saying, from what you can see on the ground, that is shifting? What are you seeing on the ground?
Absolutely nothing. In fact, not just because I have the opportunity to be not only looking at issues right from within the county alone, but also the coastal community as a whole. And the one fact that is very glaring is that, in fact, Jubilee is about to perform worse in 2017 than they did in 2013.
All right.
Yeah,
We'll wait to see if
their,
that happens.
I'll tell you the reason why.
All right.
If you look at the approach of the Jubilee administration and how to handle the coastal issues is all wrong.
All right. Thanks, Michael, for your opinion. Many thanks for calling in with your perspectives. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. That is Michael from Taita Taveta. Bonke, you wanted to respond to something that Jared said?
Yes. Jared is saying that we need to show Kenyans within 7 months remaining the stadiums, the government promised Kenyans 5 million jobs. You see, when the manifesto of Jubilee was being crafted, we were putting this devolved government into perspective. This is a collective responsibility. Jared should know that we have governors, and these governors, they have ministers. In Kisumu County, where he's calling us from, there is a minister, we have a CS there for sports. So the problem with the governors from the opposition, they were trying to implement. Actually, the incompetence you are seeing in CORD strongholds in terms of development, those are now the policies they had in 2013, because they were replicating what their presidential candidate was sharing with Kenyans. Right. So if you're talking about stadiums, it is upon their governors to take these initiatives to the central government to share, because it's a collective responsibility. So if you're talking about failure and some of the areas which we've not performed, I think Wananchi should now know and decide directly from the county rep who is going to be their leader. Who is going to be their senator, governor, and the president? I
need us to leave this here. I'll just talk about something else. And as I told you, as we began the show, tomorrow, January the 16th, 2017, is when, according to the IEBC, Independent Election Boundaries Commission timelines, the second phase of the mass voter registration exercise kicks off. This is what political parties have been waiting for, perhaps as Dismas rightly prophesied last week. The reason why the opposition did not or avoided the path of saying they go back to the streets to oppose the electoral laws, because this is the time the political parties will be wanting to focus all their energies to mobilize their support bases, their strongholds, to use a cliche, to come out in large numbers and register as voters to give them a chance in August 2017. So that begins tomorrow. The first phase did not go so well. The IEBC had targeted 4 million voters. They only got paltry, just more than 1 million voters. They are targeting between 4 to 6 million new voters on the register. I want us to talk about that in the next 20 minutes or so. Just what are some of the issues that maybe Kenyans will be looking at as they go out to register? Remember, the process of registering for as a voter in this country has been ongoing. It is a continuous process that goes on in the IEBC constituency offices. But this is the time that for 1 month, 30 days or so, the IEBC will roll out this across the country and try to register many voters. This voter registration ends in May this year. But gentlemen, let me start with, on the part of the IEBC, starting with you, Dismas. What will be their focus? There has been a lot of issues that they are going through. Remember, they are in the process of finding commissioners, but of course the secretariat is still in place. They have been accused of not being fair in terms of when they are rolling out this voter registration, the mass voter registration. What will be on their minds as this exercise kicks off tomorrow?
Two things will be at the top of their priority list. Number one, they've been accused of engaging in very shoddy communications. Like during the past voter registration, sometimes it would be impossible to locate a BVR kit. If you wanted to register, you wouldn't know where it is. That would be number one. And then number two, they need to come out clearly and give that schedule of how the BVR kits are going to be distributed. Because right now there are a section of people from COD or NASA who are actually claiming that IEBC is participating in rigging the elections by ensuring that the BVR kits are supplied in large numbers in places that seem to be leading towards Jubilee. So I think it's incumbent on IEBC itself to come out with a very serious communication strategy and allay those fears. Because again, we don't want people to start casting aspersions on the integrity of IEBC. Like for instance, if they want to get 6 million new registered voters, and we are told they have 7,800 BVR kits, meaning that each kit has to register, I think, 25 people continuously for 30 days for them to get about the 6 million registered voters. So it will be important for IEBC to make sure that they work with the politicians in sending out the information on where the kits are going to be located, and also work with the civil society that its party leader has been criticizing. Because, you know, civil society at the ground level, at the grassroots, is very keen, or rather it's very useful in assisting in voter registration. But again, something important which has come out in the newspapers today is that IEBC is not going to allow for mass voter transportation. That if you want to run, say, in Nairobi, and you are a Kikuyu man, you go to Kiambu and you bring all the voters. So they made it very complicated. That if you want to change your vote, you have to go to the constituency headquarters and move your vote, which I think is very important. But now coming to the political parties, one has to give Jubilee credit because they've got a very solid voter registration strategy. And for them, I think they've run out. They'll not be going to funerals and churches and telling people to go and register as COD plans to do. Instead, they've got very active mobilizers at the ward level who will be calling up on people to ensure that they've gone to register. So the August scoreboard for COD would be improved significantly if they just avoid addressing rallies and get people to mobilize at the grassroots level. That way now they'll get a lot of mileage.
Bonke, Jubilee in 2013, their mobilization was top draw. I mean, there was a lot of, the voter turnout was, and was excellent. What do they need to do different now? Because they already did that in 2013. What do they need to do now?
I will not expose that to the public because, you know, COD, they're looking for strategies on how they can win, the NASA, which there are things that I will not expose. But I would assure you that the same thing we did in 2013, we've created a system. And IEBC is an independent body, and there's this fear, this notion of fear and propaganda being circulated by the opposition that the government is trying to manipulate the IEBC, and this is an independent body. You know, the problem they're having is that they are on the street demonstrating and all that, but they don't come out to talk to their supporters to register as voters. And remember, when we did the first voter registration, they had a problem with the entire process. So we are going to assure them that our supporters will come out tomorrow in large numbers, and they know, so that we can be able to take our honorable opposition leaders into retirement with dignity.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the issue of voter apathy,
Yes.
Brian.
Yeah, sure.
Western Kenya, which is where a lot of efforts have been, you know, directed by both Jubilee and CORD, even in terms opposition, even in terms of Musalia Mudavadi trying to marshal as much as he can, and Moses Wetangula, and even Raila's influence in Western. There seems to be this notion, fact or otherwise, that there are a lot of voters, that the potential in terms of votes in Western Kenya is massive. But Kenyans there just don't feel the urge to register as voters. How do they, both sides of the political divide, in whichever strongholds they have, deal with the issue of voter apathy?
I think the Mulembe Nation from the start has been, has lacked the glue ever since that could gel them together in terms of voting patterns as a bloc. And you realize that it being comprising of several clans and tribes that form the Luhya Nation, you realize that they have never had that kind of leader or leadership that could offer that kind of solidified you know, approach towards gaining leadership of this country. And therefore, you realize that wherever a certain group is seemed to be being favored by the government of the day, another faction is also experiencing an opposite of the same. For instance, when you look at the Bukusu, who are the majority in the Luhya Nation, for instance, you realize that currently they are, you know, inclined towards Wetangula and all that. Maragolis are on the side of Mudavadi and so on. You realize that there's also another group of Tirikis and Banyoles who are also, you know, playing in the gallows of maybe the opposition or the Jubilee and all that. And you realize that it has never gelled as a community, so to speak. And therefore, you realize that out of that kind of behavioral patterns, you realize that there are some incidents majorly on voter apathy.
All right.
But I also want to say something, Ben, that perhaps I had not indicated from the previous conversation that they have picked, that as much as we are agitating or advocating for mass voter registration, according to the Constitution, I think it would not be fair to coerce people to go to vote. I mean, to register as voters.
Why do you say that?
This should be a volunteer sort of exercise where somebody, you know, out of his conscience is able to make up his mind and go to register without being coerced. We have cases, and I've had cases where people are being denied even to the extent of beer simply because they have not registered as voters in some cases and all that. That's infringing on their rights. And therefore, this exercise should be...
I think these are tactics to make sure they register as many voters.
Exactly.
Let's talk to a voter, one of our viewers here before we move on. This is Maurice. Maurice, good morning. Maurice, can you hear us? Good morning, sir. Well, we seem to have lost Maurice on the line. Let's talk to Jared Okello on this. Jared, we're talking about the issue of voter apathy, not what Brian was talking about. That is in terms of the Western vote not having one, you know, voting in the same direction. But in terms of potential votes in Western Kenya, a lot of them apparently, but they don't have motivation to register as voters. How does your party, Ford Kenya, in the CORD picture, in the NASA picture, how does it make sure that they register as voters?
Thank you, Ben. You remember that this is the second mass registration exercise employed by IEBC to register people as voters. The first one, even with a projection of 4 million expected new registered voters, they only got a paltry 1 million. Of course, there were many issues that were at play. Firstly, is that it came at a time when IEBC's reputation was at its worst. Then secondly, you had the stakeholders who never came out to also rally voters behind this most fundamental exercise. This time, you have seen the warring factions, as I would call them, both Jubilee and CORD/NASA have come out so forcefully, asking people to register as voters so that they can change the political discourse of this country. Raila Odinga, Right Honorable Raila Odinga, will be here in Kisumu on Wednesday to, you know, kickstart this exercise. So, and you know, when Right Honorable Raila Odinga is around and he puts sense on this part of exercise, then many people who are not registered as voters would definitely come out to register. We have had issues of several identification cards still hold up in Huduma centers or in DO's offices or chief's offices. I think there is also some degree of fatigue that comes with the collection of ideas. You have to present to people very, very good reasons why they need to have those ideas. And the best way would be to engage people in jobs, because they know it is a requirement that before you get employed, you must have an identification card. If Jubilee moved alongside all the promises they made, including 1 million jobs every year, then everybody would be having ID and everybody would be registering as a voter today. But because that is still a disconnect, it becomes a very big problem. You know, you've talked about voter apathy, Ben. I know people are going to register because all the leaders who then represent their interest in various political scenarios are part and parcel of this process. But you come to look at how best do we then harness these voters to come out, to cast their votes on the 8th of August. And I want to talk about this fundamental question that has always been reeling around, and that is carrying out a credible nomination exercise by these political parties. Honorable Raila Odinga, while talking at the Bomas of Kenya, paid a lot of credence to fairness on the nomination exercise. Jubilee event on Friday paid a lot of attention to fairness in the nomination exercise. Because once you muzzle and you suppress people's wishes by curtailing their freedom to choose people of their choice, then definitely people do not see the need of coming out early in the morning, queuing in long queues, in order that they can cast their votes, particularly to people who they do not have a lot of faith in. So these are the questions that abound, Ben.
Thanks, Jared. Yes, Bonke, and also there has been reported voter apathy in central Kenya. How will Jubilee deal with that?
Well, it's now, the president spoke about it. It's now upon the aspirants and leaders down there to talk to the voters, to come out in large numbers. And I would urge the Jubilee supporters not to be lazy, because you know what has been happening in the Great Western region. The previous registration exercise, the media and some other bodies did the analysis, and actually in Nyanza, the number of those who came out to register were quite low. You see, if you keep on, I mean, you have a candidate and you keep on voting someone, and after the end of election, our victory is being stolen, people can also be tired. So the strike, actually it was a strike. What we experienced in the Great Western region, including the Luo Nation, is that they were just sending an information to opposition leader that give us an option. We need an option, because we've been doing this for certain years back. But what we normally experience at the end of the day is disappointments. So that's why I'm telling my great people, actually in Central, you are going to see what is going to happen in Central Nyanza. Those people, they register as voters. I would focus in the Great Western region. I would encourage them to come out tomorrow in large numbers, because we have a solution. We have a plan B. We must be into the system come 2022. We must be in the government,
I want us to
and
talk
we
about
have
the
to work
issue
close
of
with the government.
ethnic mobilization. Important, thanks for that point. I want us to talk about the issue of ethnic mobilization, whether it's negative or a good thing. I have heard a song, a Luya song, calling out people to come out in large numbers and register as voters. There have been reports of some vernacular radio stations across the country, some of them in central Kenya, calling out to voters to register, to come out to register as voters, to be able to defend the Udhamaki, the leader king that they have. I mean, is this a bad thing, Dismas? Is ethnic mobilization a negative thing?
Well, it's a double-edged sword, and having people register as voters is their fundamental constitutional right, so that you can vote in a government that you desire. Actually, in some countries like New Zealand, they've gone the extra mile to make sure that voting is actually mandatory, so you don't have an option. If you fail to vote, you suffer some penalties. But now the reasoning that is being given by politicians, especially from central Kenya, is you are requested to go and vote, not because you are voting for your future, but you are going to vote and defend a certain kingdom. So essentially, they are conditioning your mind, they're doing a lot of propaganda. And they're reducing voters to machines. That are, you go get your votes, and on the material they will tell you how to vote. So majority of the people from Central Kenya will be going to vote not because they want to vote for a government which is going to address their cost of living or increase mortgages. And you know, it's very shocking when Bonke says he rates himself 80% as their success. And if you go to the streets in Nairobi, you see a lot of garbage. Healthcare, the medical doctors are on strike. Teachers are about to go on strike at the university level. The cost of energy is very high. Most companies are laying off their employees. Companies are relocating from Kenya. So one wonders how this 80% comes about. But when you tell people, even if it's in Western Kenya, that come and vote because you want to vote for Musalia or Wetangula, I think that's the wrong way, and the politicians are misleading us. Politicians must tell us that that's what you're supposed to do it, so that it increases your opportunities in life. That you go vote for somebody who can open up economic opportunities. Not you are voting simply because you want to defend somebody. Because we all know that all these are our tribal leaders. When you cast ballots in their favor, you do not become a millionaire, you do not become rich. I doubt whether somebody from Ishaweri, where President Kenyatta comes from, by merely voting for Kenyatta, is got a mortgage at 1% instead of the normal rates in the market. And I doubt whether if you come from Nyanza and you go register a vote and you vote for Raila Odinga, then you'll have access to a private jet.
How do you react to ethnic mobilization?
Exactly. I think to me it's healthy, but the way the wordings are being put are done in a way that they are bringing some unnecessary tensions in this country. While we are actually advocating or agitating for a peaceful coexistence, others are out there actually coining messages which are actually creating an isolation sort of cocoon of us and others. And therefore, for example, I listened to that clip and I did not like it the way the wordings were put, because they are like us and we, and therefore they are trying to create a wall that protects their interest by, coercing people to go and register in masses and all that. We have also seen other cases, like in Machakos, Ben, you realize that in 2 weeks, the governor actually invited members from another ethnic community in his backyard in Ukambani, which is actually perceived to be homogeneous and all that. But bringing other members from other communities to come and also vie for parliamentary seats and other elective posts, actually to me was actually a decision in the right direction, because this is actually bringing another dimension of, infusing other, ethnic backgrounds also to your so perceived to be homogenized sort of ethnic setup and all that.
Bonke, what's your take on this mobilization?
Yeah, ethnic mobilization, actually it's healthy, I'll agree with my brother here. But we should not use it to block a certain individual not to access power. When we are mobilizing our tribal men, like our brothers and sisters from where we came from, we need now to tell them that after having that after having that voting card, we need to get leaders who can actualize their interest. And that's why we are saying, even right now I'm in Jubilee, but tomorrow when we sit down with the president, I'll be able to argue my case based on the support I have down there. So our people should not just reason based on tribal, based on tribal issues and all that. They need to know, what do they want? Can they vote a leader who can understand their interest, someone who can actualize whatever they've been praying for, someone who can understand their problems, but not a politician who is using them for his political gain, or someone who is using them to attack the police. And after we've lost these young people, no one even talked about them. And you'll allow me to remind our panel about this. Recently, when we have demonstration, we lost lives in Nyanza. Actually, they were young people. They were my age mates, 38, 34, 40, 20-something years old. Look at that. When we're in a country whereby anytime we are responding or talking to the government, we must take young people to the streets and incite them to go against the police. I think it's quite worrying. So for us to build the proper foundation for the 7th generation, we need to have leaders who can visualize and actualize the interest of common man.
Thank you.
Ben, Bonke has said a statement that under normal circumstances, would make you worried. You would even cut the show to come to an end. When you allow politicians to get to office based on ethnic mobilization, then they have no reason to deliver on their manifesto. Like, for instance, the Jubilee manifesto. If President Kenyatta knows that the only reason why I'm in office is because of ethnic mobilization, then he has no reason at all to vote for any other person. And I think this is a matter that Kaparo should look at carefully, because everybody who is being conditioned that go take your vote, and then when you have it, we are going to vote for, say, President Kenyatta or Raila Odinga to protect our interests, then they'll not be thinking as Kenyans.
But
In fact, that's an issue of national integration and cohesion.
All right, let's get one final thoughts from Jared. Jared, you're a potential candidate in August 2017, the 8th of August. What is the best way to mobilize potential voters to register as voters?
Well, Ben, there is nothing wrong to retreat to your vernacular to pass the right message so that people can come out to register as voters. The problem comes when the messages are laced with gongs of war. We as a country already have so much in our plate, things that are actually a recipe for chaos. And if we pass messages using our vernacular radio stations in a way that may lead to recruitment of indoctrinated youths or extremist groups that have the potential to met terror on its people, then I think we are getting it wrong as a nation. We have to let the people know that good citizens elect leaders by way of not voting. So if we have to change our structure of leadership by bringing in people of integrity, bring in people who are enlightened on the needs and aspirations of the Kenyan people, then they have to register as voters and cast their votes at the end of the day. We don't necessarily have to say that this is about them and about us. For other people, it is about protection of the status quo. It is about letting people know that what the status quo has achieved in its lifetime is A, B, C, D, so that at the end of the day, Kenyans are convinced why they should vote Jubilee, or they have to change the entire managerial structure of the Republic of Kenya and bring in people who will then respond to the wishes of the Kenyan people. So I think I'm here on the ground. I will be engaging in certain radio stations tomorrow and the day after. And the message we are passing is that this is an opportune time for people to have a leadership that they desire. And through that, you just have to register and cast that vote. Ben.
Thank you, Jared. Thank you, Jared. Thank you, Jared. That is where we want to leave it. Many thanks for joining us from Kisumu. All the best as you mobilize potential voters to register as voters. Remember that second phase of the mass voter registration by the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission starts tomorrow. Many thanks, Dismas Mokua, Bonke Kumwai, and Brian Mutie for your perspectives this morning. Also, we leave it on the show. This has been Sunday edition. That is where we tackle and dissect the big political issues of the week. It is less than 7 months of the general election. Tomorrow, the mass voter registration second phase begins. IEBC targeting between 4 to 6 million voters. Make sure you go out there and register as a voter in the August 8th, 2017 general election. Be sure to join us every Sunday from 10 a.m. to 12 noon and join the conversation. Take care of yourselves. I'm Ben Kitili. Bye for now.